I mean, engineers, we are ruthless to each other. We want every second of every day, every dollar that's possible. I mean, we are ruthless to each other because we hold ourselves to such a high standard, but that can often lead to very toxic culture.
Hello and welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today, we're speaking with Joshua Tarbutton, a U.S. Army veteran and former professor who founded Bravo Team in 2018, blending discipline from the military with academic rigor to build an innovation-first engineering design and fabrication firm headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. Under his leadership, Bravo Team has been recognized as number 2 on the Charlotte Business Journal's Fast 50 and ranked number 489 on the Inc. 5000, guiding a growing team of engineers and technologists to tackle clients' toughest challenges across design, automation, and prototyping. Today, Josh brings insight into building a company that centers engineer creativity, scalable leadership, and applied innovation. Josh, thanks so much for being with us today on the Being an Engineer podcast.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me. Glad to be here.
So why don't you walk us through your history a little bit? What made you decide to become an engineer? And then you spent some time in the military and then as a professor as well. Right?
Yes. So I guess this memory actually came to me this year. I remembered going to my dad's office, and my dad was he was a forensics engineer for mainly buildings, but joined a forensics firm, and they had a busted up car that they were trying to figure out and do the accident reconstruction. And I just remember being fascinated that it's like, wow, there's people out there that like can tell the story about what happened just by looking at the wreckage. And so I guess, I was inspired. I guess I knew about engineering because my father, but it was really just, I guess, an early, fascination or like echoes of potential bliss if I were able to, find a pathway to spend more time there.
Very cool. Okay. So, tell us a little bit about being in the Army and how you think that influenced your career as an engineer.
Yeah, it actually had quite a huge influence, and I'd say there's two main things. The first is the esprit de corps through that you experience through mutual suffering. And I think the bond, a lot of, people that have been in the service or, even are, part of a, fire department or police unit, there's sort of this above and beyond experiences that you get to have together. And those times are really bonding. You also, I spent a year in Iraq, so we lived together, in Iraq, and you really learn a lot about people. And at first, I think the people we don't understand, we come to understand a lot better. The things that rubbed us the wrong way, we find often it was just we didn't understand. We were the ones who were looking at it from a lower way of thinking. And so I think the people part of it was just has returned many rich blessings, I guess, throughout my life with relating to other people. But then there's the other part of the Army where, there is sort of the, kind of knowing what you're capable of, I think personally. But the second thing that I was going to mention is this philosophy of setting your soldiers up for success. And, deeply ingrained in, the military way of being is that, if you have a subordinate that could have performed their mission with less trouble, and you're their leader, it's your responsibility, like 100%, to do everything in your power to set them up for success. And I'd say that's permeated all throughout Bravo Team, the company that I'm part of now. And it's a core way of being, especially if you're in a position of leadership. It's, you have to sense of ownership for how well other people do. And it's really like the heart of servant leadership, I think. So there's a lot of other good lessons that I learned, but those two stick out.
Tell us a little bit about your beginning Bravo team. So that was 2018, right, that you started the company. And I think you were a professor before then. What made you decide to make the leap to being a business owner?
Well, it started a little bit earlier than that. There's a little bit of a backstory where I met a person that needed a little technical help, and we ended up starting a company, which I got voted out of. But I had spent a year of my life helping try to build this company, and realized that, when I first started, I thought, oh man, there's no way I can, be a professor and do anything like this simultaneously. But then through the course of the year, I had learned how to do, the things in business that I needed to do. So they took a little bit less time, and it just kind of gave me the confidence that when I got voted out, that I just started Bravo team, the next week. And so there was a lot of lessons, learned there. As far as leaving academia, I didn't leave academia at that time. I did consulting on the side, to kind of help supplement the income, because professors are not particularly overpaid. And I have my wife and we have 4 kids, and as they get older, they get a little bit more expensive. And so, I would do some consulting, and a couple of things happened I went to helping these other guys start their company or start our company, which I, got voted out of. But that experience kind of gave me more confidence. And I also realized how hard it is to just do everything on your own. It's just so much of your personal time is consumed just by trying to make sure your customers have a good experience and all this stuff. And as part of getting voted out, they said, well, we don't want to do engineering services, which is part of the reason we started the company. So, we had developed a relationship with a customer, and that one customer said, oh, we love the way that you do design. We'd like to stay with you. Why don't you hire a couple students? And so I did. And, that first year, I think we did $250,000 in revenue, which was enough to keep them both paid and pay the rent. And we made it. We made it through our first year, barely. I mean, I was still had a full teaching load, and the 4 kids and all that stuff. So it required 100% of my focus. 100% of my focus. That was a long answer to a short question.
No, I love the detail. Getting voted out of a company, to me, that seems like kind of a rough experience. It may have been. How did you deal with that? What was your mindset? How did you get past it and just, pick that ball up and keep running?
Well, I'm no Superman. I felt all the feels like anybody else would. I even thought about, like hurting the person's dog. That's how like angry I was about it. And, just insane, the things we think about when we're angry. But like all bad things that happen, there's always opportunity for them to be transmuted into wisdom. And, it took a couple years, but we were able to finally, reconnect and bury the hatchet and, see things from the other person's perspective and all that. But in the middle of it, it was, I think, we all respond differently to conflict. I'm on the fight, flight, or fold category. I definitely identify more with fight. So I think there's a little bit of an unhealthy, like, well, let's see what we can do kind of thing. And a little bit of ego and pride associated with getting through the first year, profitably and all that stuff. But then it really just became, back to what I had originally set out to do. And that is to build, a company where the engineer is given everything they need to absolutely, shine in their creative magic. And, people don't think of the engineer like an artist, but they're the artists that take the laws of the universe and paint them on the canvas of the world. And I just, I was graduating all these students, it's like they graduate, they started, college off with a lot of hopes and dreams, and they want to design, they want to create. And then they realize somewhere along the way that it's, it takes a lot of, that's why people don't know famous engineers. I mean, it's because it takes a village to get anything, done well. I mean, we do have examples of fantastic engineers, where they still have their names associated, like Zeiss and Timken and things like that. But generally the engineer, isn't, able to bring everything that they could without the right, system. And seeing students graduate and then going into what I would consider like places where all creativity is destroyed, part of it was just, heartbreaking to like, why are these companies not getting all of this latent like value out of these engineers? And, like most people that start businesses, I guess I thought I could do it a little better. That's part of why we start businesses. We don't know how hard it is to do a good job. But we've learned a lot along the way. So,
well, that's a great segue into this next question, which is you've talked about this idea of restoring the dignity of the engineer's experience. What does that mean?
Yeah, I guess I already was on that soapbox a little bit, but I think, I feel like, engineers are often special humans, and that's why they make so many jokes about us. I think, the likelihood of many of us being able to pass the test that puts us on the spectrum is pretty high. And I just don't think they're seen in all their beauty. And I think because of that, people poke fun of them, but they don't realize just like what a beautiful and creative, person this is. And as a professor, you get to see this in such a profound way. I mean, it's the student that has, no shoes on and, is at the back of the class and hasn't showered in days and just doesn't talk, and their homework looks like chicken scratch until you start to see how they're thinking. And it's just this beautiful person is in there, but stuck in a world where, it's not super safe for them. And, this raises all sorts of questions in my mind, but just to be a part of just creating a little bit of a safer place for people to create and seeing what happens, and them being able to define their own dignity, their own sense of, how they want to show up. I mean, we created the company in such a way to try to foster that, but that's also hard to do. I mean, when you're an idealist, you're either angry all the time because life doesn't meet your ideals, or you just, have to understand that, to aspire to things is a worthy endeavor. To make progress towards things is worthy endeavor, but the destination, it always is moving, right? So.
Right. Yeah. I love that phrase, restoring the dignity of the engineer's experience. I like to say that engineers are the unsung heroes of the world.
Yes.
Because you look around and pretty much everything that we interact with was innovated by a team of engineers, right? So I agree. Engineers don't get the credit that they deserve. I'd love to go back and talk a little bit more about, you made a comment to the effect of creating a safe space in which engineers can operate. Can you share, if one comes to mind, is there an example of a time when you saw an unsafe place?
Absolutely.
And I assume we're talking about psychologically unsafe here. And then also, second part to that question is, what are a couple of tactical things that you have done at Bravo team to ensure they do have a safe space in which to operate?
Well, yes. Great question. So, I mean, I think academia is generally unsafe for people that struggle. It's like, you're measured, you get your score on your paper. If you didn't do well, you feel like everybody's looking at you. I mean, I don't know how everybody feels, but I definitely saw a lot of this type of behavior. And I just feel like when performance is attached to identity, we always are at risk of destroying someone's security and confidence. And, I think the way that we're unsafe, and I've been a very unsafe person, not always realizing it, but because, I stayed in school a long time and I have a lot of life experiences, and I created a company that has been successful. People will perceive me as somebody with more authority sometimes. And I think, if I make a comment about somebody's work, I have to be careful, because the way it could land could just be shame, but I might be coming at it just from a very, impatient technical perspective. And I think that, that's a way we make things unsafe for engineers. One way is we, like, if they screw up or they don't do a good job, it's like, it's almost like your work is kind of public in a sense. And I think, like, if you do a couple of stupid things in the wrong environment, then people may, undervalue what you can contribute. So I think, anytime we create, a culture in our companies where we don't let people be who they really are, and allow their own superpowers to kind of, emerge, then I think not only is the company missing out, but we're creating toxic places for these individuals. The problem is it's hard to see. And so, and especially this is compounded in engineering by having engineers they're often run by people that don't even know the tool that they're working with. The engineer, they don't even understand the engineer. And unfortunately, the engineer doesn't always understand that the business has to make money. And so it's just this, it's this dance that I wish we could, craft a little bit of language about and kind of restore the dignity of this whole experience. It's, engineers are not trying to make life harder for anybody. They're always trying to make it better. And it just often, I think, it gets lost in translation. So those are some things I think about restoring the dignity and, trying to avoid a toxic workplace.
What are a couple of tactical approaches that you've taken at Bravo Team to help engineers feel safe and who they really are?
From motors and robotics to controls, automation, and precision prototyping, Simutech brings ANSYS simulation tools and expert insight directly to your team. We help you accelerate design, reduce risk, and eliminate costly rework.
Validate before you fabricate. Simutech Group helps you simulate thermal stress, vibration, fluid flow, electronics cooling, electromagnetic performance, you name it.
Whether you're in automotive, aerospace, energy, industrial automation, or the next big thing, Simutech partners with innovators to deliver simulation-driven results that move products forward. Build smarter machines, launch stronger products, scale faster with Simutech's simulation support by your side.
Simutech Group, your engineering partner in motion. Visit simutechgroup.com and let's power up your next design.
Like they say, like, no matter what you say, as the leadership goes, so goes the people. And so, I think I have to model it. I think one way of modeling it is to be vulnerable. I'm a huge Brene Brown fan, and, she had a huge impact on my own life personally. And she's the shame and vulnerability researcher that basically said that people cannot experience human connection if they're trapped in toxic shame. And, the only way out of it is for us to be vulnerable, and vulnerability requires courage. And, courage is only defined when there's fear. And so really it's about, people not being afraid to be vulnerable. And so one way that I try to encourage the company to be vulnerable is to say, hey, look, we don't know everything. Or, when there's moments I do something stupid, maybe try to acknowledge it, not, I want to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm not going to lie. My ego definitely wants to know the answer. Right. But, just reminding myself, like, look, and I'm reminded all the time, if this is really not an issue for me, I probably change so much anymore, but the people that we've been able to hire and attract and retain, I'll come in and say, hey, have you thought about this? And they're like, oh yeah, that was like last week's discussion. So, it's like, so I think, modeling vulnerability is the key to allowing people to face those fears that prevent them from exercising courage to be vulnerable if they need a little help. So I'm always reminding them, look, guys, we're in this together. If you're don't struggle. Why struggle? Just go ask somebody for help. If you're afraid you feel like you look stupid, well, then you're giving them permission. And when they feel safe, when they feel stupid, to go ask you. It's like forgetting the quadratic formula on a test. I taught numerical methods. I would tell the students, don't forget the quadratic formula. It's like basic, but there you are in the headlights, and, who knows what happened? Who knows what friend did what, or who died, or what grandmother I killed again by assigning another exam. And so this, it's like, it's one of those things where you don't know where they are. So I'd always give them the formula, because if they could do the rest of the work, it's like, where are they going to be in a world where they can't get that information? And it's like, hey, it's okay. Well, how do you think that students is going to feel towards the subject? How do you think they're going to feel towards the class? How will their approach and their learning be, for the next exam, if they know that I'm not out there trying to get them to prove how smart they are, and it's really like separating that identity from the performance in a culture where you really do need to perform. Engineers, we are ruthless to each other. We want every second of every day, every dollar that's possible. We are ruthless to each other because we hold ourselves to such a high standard, but that can often lead to very toxic culture.
I love what you say about being ruthless to one another, because we're so driven. It's not that we have antagonistic intent at all, right? It's just that we're so driven to be highly, highly efficient. And I've noticed this in my own life, that I think I've actually based my identity to some extent on productivity. And in the times when I feel like I'm not being productive, I don't feel good about myself. I'm not sure that that's healthy, but it's an insight I've had about myself recently. And when I am being very productive, I feel great about myself, right? So I think engineers are generally just, like normal humans. Most people are just good, nice people who want to do well to others. But we are driven to be so efficient, and sometimes that can come across as being ruthless towards each other.
Yeah, and design is open. So anytime we're designing an open-ended design, it's open for criticism, and but getting past that, right? And this is kind of what I was trying to describe with the Army is, I think if teams can get past that, they can experience the esprit de corps, like the spirit of the Corps is what the Marines like describe. It's the Semper Fi. It's like the unifying experience. I think when people get past that transition, they can really experience something special. They even have, the data that, people talk about some of the worst times that they had, in their companies when they're working like 20-hour days and they have these deadlines, and they often look back at these memories, and these were some of the best memories that they have in their life, because they were working for something. They were putting their heart into it. And that's what I want. I want to have a company that where the work merits the work, the customers, the people you get to work with, it merits you bringing your energy with you to the day. You bring your whole heart into it. Like you're excited. You want to get into design. But another part of the problem with engineering is that some of the stuff we do is just so boring. It's like we get these ebbs and flows of like creative and new projects and awesome, but then we have to get a freaking drawing package and, generate drawings for like hours and hours and days and details. And so, one of the ways around that is to find people that like enjoy different parts of the work, but that goes back to being vulnerable and honest. And we have people take the Working Genius assessment. We encourage them to take their Myers-Briggs. We are piloting a new platform called the Wilder Method, which compounds like kind of where you are in terms of where you want to be. So it's a very personalized way of examining and taking a look at how you approach your work. So these are some of the things we're doing as well.
Very cool. You've been successful with Bravo Teams. Started in 2018, and you've already grown quite a bit since then. What do you recognize as some of the core factors that have helped you grow your company so quickly?
Well, I would say, for us, it comes down to having an amazing partnership with a big company, and that's the truth of it. But scaling with the demands of a big company is something that was extremely challenging to do. Cause we went from, 6 people to 50 people in a relatively short amount of time, with over 30 engineers, and, we had 5 machinist fabricators. So the scaling, I think, was the scaling for the demand, but I'd say like we had a customer that really resonated with the value that we provided, and we were able to grow into that relationship, and really became, a beautiful partnership. So I think like our growth and our success, is a little bit overly inflated because we did have one customer, but we've also served, over 100 other customers, and so I'd say a lot of the success is because of that, but also just doing what it takes to do the work, and doing what it takes to keep the customer happy, even if they're crazy. There's crazy customers out there. They're horrible people, like horrible. They're just really unable to listen to another human being. Their way of seeing the world is the way, I guess, the world is that they uniquely see, and I think that can be difficult, too. But I think, like just being true to your word and showing up for the work I think the fundamentals are kind of simple. It's, you got to provide value for people to exchange money, and they just got to get more value that they have to feel. They have to, get the value that they pay for. And I think that's the hard part of all businesses is how do we do that better? How do we do that well? And I made a lot of mistakes, along the way.
What was one of the biggest mistakes that you've made so far?
I'd say like the reoccurring theme is like, I imagine that we can, change directions faster than we can. And so I brought a lot of chaos to the company, by trying to go after things, mobilize people, and I burned people out. I think part of it was survival. Part of it was like rooted in, fear and just trying to make sure everybody gets paid, and carrying the weight and the burden of responsibility. Fortunately, I've hired some great people around me. Dan Hawk, is our president, and he and I worked together, at the university. He did about 1,000, more than 1,000 senior design projects over 15 years. So he's stepped in as president, brought a lot of maturity. And, just the past couple of weeks, Tom Ryan has agreed to step in as the CEO, which is allowing me to get back to the more creative work. So that's the other thing is is people. So great customer, stick to the fundamentals, and you've got to have great people, because it doesn't matter who you are. You're not everything to everybody, and you really need to find people that complement your, strengths and make up for your weaknesses. And in my case, I have some pretty obvious weaknesses. And so I was able to, protect the business by protecting, us from what we couldn't deliver well, or what I couldn't do very well. As you probably tell from me rambling here, I'm a little bit more on the scatterbrain side. And so hiring people that are much more organized was essential, for us to grow.
The Product Development Expo, or PDX, is your chance to learn from subject matter experts providing practical, hands-on training for dozens of different engineering topics. GD&T, Advanced Surface Modeling, DFM, plating and finishing techniques, programming robots, adhesive dispensing, prototyping tips and tricks, and lots more. PDX happens October 21st and 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Learn more at pdexpo.engineer. That's pdexpo.engineer. Yeah, I hate to say this, but I think it's true. And I think most businesses would agree with me that there's at least an element of truth to luck. Just getting lucky, right? Finding that big customer. We've had, I'll say we've had 2 big customers in our history, and each of them helped take Pipeline to that next level. And we probably wouldn't have gotten there without those big customers, that just pump a whole bunch of cash into the company, of course, for, some really great work that we did. But at the end of the day, it's that cash coming in, the cash flow that allows you to hire more people, increase and improve your capabilities, and just take the step to that next level of company. So yeah, I think luck is also an element. Of course, like you said, you have to have really great people, you have to deliver value, you have to have the right team members, but there's also this pesky element of luck that is really difficult to design for, right? It just kind of, it's capricious, it's random, it happens, and you have to be around long enough for luck to find you sometimes.
Yeah, when you get lucky, you got to remember you were lucky. You can't all of a sudden be like, "Oh, look how awesome I am! I'm so amazing!" Right? Look at what I did,
right.
But we tend there. I tend there. My wife and I, we actually have a saying along that lines. So we say we're accidentally awesome. So.
I'll tell this story because I understand that you are, or at least were, maybe still are, a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And for those of you listeners who don't know, EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, it's kind of like group coaching in a way. You get together typically 4 times a year, and you have these day-long educational events where there's a speaker, usually a very seasoned business person who does some training, and then on a monthly basis you'll get together with a smaller group, and there's a coach who is a successful business owner, him or herself, and anyway, you get trained over time like this. I loved it. I thought it was really great. I was actually part of Entrepreneurs Organization Accelerator, which was like sub $1 million. And then I, for whatever reason, just decided not to continue going with it once I graduated that stage. But there was this woman in my group who used to call me the accidental millionaire. Not that I'm a millionaire, but I'm not even close to a millionaire. But we had this really big customer, right? And we totally just lucked into it. And that's what she would call me, is the accidental millionaire. All right. Well, let me take a very short break here and share that the Being an Engineer podcast is brought to you by Pipeline Design and Engineering, where we don't design pipelines, but we do help companies develop advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services. Learn more at teampipeline.us. The podcast is also sponsored by The Wave, an online platform of free tools, education, and community for engineers. Learn more at thewave.engineer. We're speaking with Josh Tarbutton today. So Josh, during the COVID time, the pandemic, 2020-ish, you did a pivot into producing some recyclable protective shields. Tell us a little bit about that experience. What was that like? And what did you learn about rapid manufacturing?
Oh boy. So since we've started, we always wanted to be able to make some of what we design. So we bought a CNC machine early on, mainly because I'm impatient, and I don't want to wait 2 weeks for something if I could just go out and make it and get the answer today. And if you look at, project life cycles, I think a lot of projects, most projects you could reduce their life cycle by 20 to 40% by just managing projects differently. But in this particular case, we had a flex space. It's about a 2,000 square foot building. And we, about half and half office and fab equipment where we had, welder and CNC machine and laser cutter and all that stuff. And, our work dried up, as most people's did. We're kind of the tip of the spear. We do development of, new things, kind of like pipeline. And when, the consumers are all afraid and don't know what to think and everybody's locked in their houses, they're obviously not, paying money for the next, innovation. So our money just dried up almost overnight. So I believed in what we were doing. So I mortgaged my house and drained my retirement. And I did it more than once. So I can't remember what I did at this point in time. I didn't have any money. So there's a time when we started the business, I think I had like $28.32 in the account, and I had like $0 and 0 cents in my personal account. And I'm in my late 30s. It's like, are you serious? But, and then COVID happened and our customers dried up. And so I try to, one of the things you try to do in your business early on is manage cash flow and figure out accounting. And so, I basically had a cash flow planning spreadsheet, and I just tried to figure out how to get that date as far as possible into the future. And because we made a bunch of stuff for people, somebody reached out to us from a friend of a friend, and we ended up making 20,000, face shields for, the local hospitals, so that, their workers could have a little bit more protection and confidence, during that whole thing. And that, and we built sets, like theater sets. We built a couple of theater sets, and basically wherever the money was, if it's like, hey, you have money, we got time, we put everybody on W-2, like from the beginning. I don't feel like the company should pass their uncertainty if they can avoid it to the employee. If they can't, of course, we do have some 1099 guys, but in general, everybody's full-time W-2. I wanted them to have that security. So it's like a deep sense of pride to me. I just never wanted to miss a payroll. I never wanted to miss a W-2 payroll. So there's a lot of late nights.
That goes back to helping everyone feel safe too, right? Psychologically safe in the environment.
Yeah. And your company's profitable. Don't spend all the money, save some money for the rainy day. And, I like, I'm a big fan of, Simple Numbers. The guy, there's an accountant, Greg Crabtree. And pretty much he said, hey, you got to have 2 months cash and then your monthly swing, before you say you're a healthy business and fully capitalized. And, so those things were very important to me. But in many ways, I just felt like, COVID just like took us all the way back to square one, wiped out all of our cash, wiped out all my cash reserve, wiped out all my, my borrowing capacity and all the money I could get. My brother also helped me, and I also have a friend, named Stan. They both helped me. But I didn't really ask for their help until, I kind of knew that their money was going to be okay. They weren't like my parachute. They were more like, once I knew it was going to work. Unfortunately, the customers came back, and then we got the idle loan and we got the PPP, like many companies. And that little bit of difference, like that little bit of tightening of the belt, experiencing the suffering, deciding whether or not, what am I going to do? It's like, do you mortgage your house or go bankrupt or shutter it or lay everybody off? All those things, a lot of stress for everybody. So many people experience this. I'm just like, well, let's burn the ships. I was broke when I started. And if we're broke again, then, it's like, here we are, it's like, you gotta go for it. It's like, if you want to change the narrative, like, what are you willing to do? And in my particular case, it's not like my only way of earning money. I could still go and be an engineer for somebody else. But my goodness, I wanted to go for it. And so we just burned the ships and went for it, but it sucked.
How did you deal with stress? This is a topic that I have thought a lot about over the years, and I'm still definitely not perfect at it. I've gotten maybe 10% better over the past 5 years or so, but how do you deal with stress?
Sometimes well, not always. And, I meditate a lot. And that's been over probably the past 5 years. And I started doing it after my wife, I saw how it benefited her. Definitely like, reminding yourself that you are not the higher power, that there is, for me, the higher power, and then, things don't go my way. Some days that's okay. And, everybody says exercise works. One day I'll listen to them. And I dealt with stress in unhealthy ways and, drank way too much, through the time, just I think, and cried out pretty much cried out to God Almighty and to help me make it through. It's like, please, please let me make it through.
I love how open and vulnerable you are about all of this. And I can assume how that level of candor and vulnerability translates into helping your team feel safe around you, because my guess is, they obviously know that the same thing, and they know that they're not hearing any BS from you. They're hearing, exactly what's going on. And I know from my own experiences that teams, sometimes it can be tempting as a business owner to sugarcoat what's actually going on behind the scenes at a company. And you think, or maybe you justify it to yourself, well, I don't want to put that stress on my team, on my employees. I'll just, sugarcoat things. Oh, everything's fine. There's no problem. But what I've found is especially engineers who are intelligent, bright individuals, they would much prefer to hear what's actually happening than the sugar-coated, rainbow stars in the sky version where everything is just fine. So anyway, I'm sure your team really appreciates that. And that's one of the things that contributes to this culture of psychological safety that you've cultivated there at Bravo Team.
I hope so. Yeah, that's a dream. I also just want to create a place where I wanted to work. It's like, where it's about the work, doing the work we love, doing a good job, taking care of the customer, and I mean, it's so much fun to see something come from nothing and to see it happen over and over and over again. And to also see like young engineers, experience like their own design being celebrated by the customer when they show it to them. Like those cheeky grins, like the ear to ear grin, just the sheer delight, the pride. They know they knocked it out of the park. I mean, to me, it's like just a worthy endeavor. It's a worthwhile way of, investing your time and energy. And we make huge economic impact. I mean, we're closely tied to manufacturing, and it's like a 4 or 5 to 1, impact that we get in our economy just by creating and designing. And I think, and again, like, I think the engineer doesn't get the proper, nobody's talking about it. So I'm glad you have this podcast. I'm glad you're, increasing the awareness, just so people can see, like, hey, this, they're not freaks. They're just, a little special.
You ever seen I think it's like an audio clip or something. I don't know that there's a video behind it. Came out quite a while ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, maybe, or maybe it was even earlier. I don't know, but it's this audio clip about the knack. And engineers having the knack. Yeah, you've heard that. All right. So any of you out there who haven't heard it, go find that.
It's a Dilbert cartoon.
Has the knack.
Yes.
Oh, is that where it came from?
Yeah. Yeah. His mother is taking him to the doctor, and that's how it starts. So it's a good little scene. If you haven't seen it, it's a rite of passage,
It is. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. Well, Josh, this has been such a pleasure. Let me just ask one more question, and then we'll wrap things up here. What is one thing that you have seen or done to accelerate the speed of engineering?
I think our company structure is one thing. If we're talking about the speed at which we deliver the engineering, and we have core hours. I have a lot of things, but I think getting the teams to work well together is the most important thing. Just getting people to work well together.
What are the core hours that you just mentioned?
We, like I said, almost all the employees at Bravo Team are W-2. And so we have core hours from 9 to 3, where everybody has to be boots on the ground so the conversations can happen. People, they need help, they can get help. And so we're all there in the work for a window of time where we know we have each other.
That's a cool idea. I think that just naturally happens. Well, you would hope that naturally happens at a lot of places, but I don't know that I've ever heard it explicitly defined that way. And I imagine there are some very tangible benefits to doing so.
Yeah, I think just magic happens when humans are sharing the same space. You can measure our energy fields like to the width of our wingspan, our hands. It's like you can measure it. There's so much that happens when we're together that doesn't happen when we're apart. But I also know that like engineers also need quiet time. And so that's something we're struggling with right now. It's like we have these core hours, we have these days, but I think there's opportunities to just continue to innovate, to facilitate deep work. We do have like pods set up in the office. But I think it's like it's a never ending opportunity of trying to figure out how to do things better. And our brains are very different. And the younger people coming now too, they've been on devices for a decade, at the younger ages. And, I remember when I sat in front of the computer for the first time. So, it's just we have to keep on asking those types of questions about how do we make things faster? How do we do better?
Yeah. I hear a lot of parallels in your story and mine. So this has been a lot of fun getting to talk to a fellow business owner of an engineering company. Josh, thanks so much for being with us today. And how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I have a pretty unique name, so that's when I'm pretty easy to find. Josh Tarbutton. I think I have a landing page, jtarbutton.com, or bravoteam.tech. .com was too expensive when I started the company. I did buy it later. It was $8,000. So if you go to bravoteam.com, it'll redirect you to bravoteam.tech. And yeah, we also, you can also get in touch with us through the Bravo Walk, which is a product that we invented to help your dog with pulling on the leash. And so those are kind of the different ways. And yeah, I would love to hear from anybody. And Aaron, it's fantastic to be on the show. I hope we get to meet in person.
I do too. We have an event coming up in October. Here, a shameless plug for our PDX event, Product Development Expo, in October, just outside of Phoenix. So if you find yourself in the area, yeah, that would be awesome to meet in person.
Yeah, I saw it at the end of your email. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Please, yeah. All right, Josh. Well, thanks again so much for being here and contributing all of your experience and wisdom into this body of knowledge that we call the Being an Engineer podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Aaron.
I'm Aaron Moncur, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services, visit us at teampipeline.us. To join a vibrant community of engineers online, visit thewave.engineer. Thank you for listening.